and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here. In fact, I have already been here for 2 years, but this is my first opportunity to have what we call a little bit of more public audience on the topic that I have been very familiar, because I have been in Spain and France for 14 years. And in Spain and France, my focus was on EU. Particularly, I study and work for my whole life about European integration, long before we have what we call the free trade area in ASEAN. So my benefit is that I have already been experienced with EU, so I can foresee what will be the implication and what will be the strategic direction of ASEAN. But today, EU, for a number of people, would think, could EU survive? Could Euro survive? Okay, I will try to answer this one and try to focus and divide my speech into two parts. The first one will concentrate on what we call the root cause of the problem. The root cause could be cyclical and also structural. The second one, what will be status? What will be the, what we call the end of the problem? Could we can see the light at the end of the tunnel? This is true that EU now is getting worse and worse, because some people will look at this light. And lastly, what would be the implication? Afterward, I think we will have what we call the chain of thinking. I will try to very brief, because I don't want to give you a lecture, but try to focus on oriented some of the idea to be what we call the food of thought for the action. So the first one, what would be or what were the causes of the present trouble in EU, not only Eurozone, because Euro suffered nearly more than half of the country. EU made up of 27 countries, but only 17 made up of the Eurozone. You two are part of EU, but not the Eurozone. Okay? But the problem here is that the Eurozone is made up of 4 big countries. I mentioned here because if it involves a big country, one contagion will destroy the whole. People talk about Greece, so a lot of people say that why don't we let them go? But Greece could have contagious effect on Spain, the 4th biggest country in Eurozone, the 5th biggest country in EU, because in EU you have United Kingdom, that is the number 3, but here Eurozone you don't have United Kingdom, so Spain upgrade from number 5th to number 4. But Spain is, greater in GDP term, combined Portugal, Greece, and Ireland together is smaller than Spain. Okay, so what would be the root cause here? I will give you here. The crisis of Eurozone or EU began in May 2 years ago, when Greece was on the brink of this. Greece would become bankrupt without the aid, setting up 4 important funds: ESSS, European Financial Stability Fund, okay, accounting for 440 billion euro. That is part of what we call the 17 countries under the responsibility of, let's say, the 73 Eurozone. The second fund, 60 billion euro under the supervision of the Commission. And the third one, IMF, 250, altogether is 1,750, setting up to help Greece. But also, prevent the contagion from Greece to Portugal and to Ireland and Portugal. Okay, that is the beginning. That is May 2 years ago. That is what we call the cyclical problem. The cyclical problem is what? Greece, like any other country, suffer from what we call the contagion from the American centurial crisis, subprime. So the subprime drain all the resources up to the point that the public sector need to intervene to help. So that is the beginning of the problem, because the problem transformed from what we call the private to the public, to the point that we can measure what we call the scale of the problem. In average, the country, I mean the Eurozone in average, a lot of country deficit hovering over 10%. Debt, public debt to GDP over 100. In fact, at the time of setting up the what we call the Maastricht Treaty, for those who wanted to be part of the Euro, you need to be aware of what we call Growth and Stability Pact. That rule, the first one, country that want to joining the Euro have to try to, have deficit under 3% of GDP. Secondly, public debt must be within 60% of GDP. But look at what happened. Most of countries have already gone beyond control, over 100. Okay? Italy now stands for 120% of public debt to GDP. Spain is lucky, this sense is 60%. But unfortunately, investors believe that there will be time when the banking in Spain erupt into crisis, the public have to intervene. So if we include what we call the private debt, that would be 180. So that's what people think. So that is what we call the cyclical problem because of the changing of the world. Okay? But the root cause of it dates back to 1993. I call it structural problem. In 1992, European community at that time had already achieved common market, single market in 1992. So after 1992, the leaders of the EU have to convene in the summit and coming out with what? Try to integrate more deeply into what we call EMU, economic and monetary union. But apart from that, they have to go toward what we call political union. So there will be 3 pillars. The pillar 1 that is the European communities. The pillar 2 is the justice, and the pillar 2 is security, foreign policy. So that's why when the Treaty of Maastricht become effective in November 1993, EC disappeared to be replaced by EU. But the root cause of this problem began right at this time. Because when you're going from what we call the single market to what we call the economic community, economic union, monetary union, you have what we call monetary union. It means that countries that want to be part of the Euro, the first one have to do something. The first one try to narrow the exchange rate among themselves. vis-a-vis the ECU, European Currency Unit. That is what we call the nominal currency, the predecessor of the euro, until 1998 at the end. If there's no discrepancy, then you are part of the euro. But in order to be that, you need to what? You need to be careful and you have to obey the iron law adopted or influenced by German, because German have to sacrifice Deutsch in order to adopt. So the iron rule is that what we call Growth and Stability Pact. Deficit must be within 3% of GDP. Public debt must be 60%. But unfortunately, you have the rule, but you have no enforcement. And during, just about 5 or 6 years ago, Germany under Schröder and France under Jacques Chirac have already violated the rule. So there is plus flexibility. So that is the beginning of the problem, because afterward, all the other countries imposed by the situation, by the crisis, so they go beyond already. So the problem here is that one, you have what we call monetary union, but you don't have fiscal union. That is the real problem, because when you have the, what we call the monetary union, it meant that you have to obey what we call the exchange rate, okay? But on the other hand, the exchange rate is not flexible. When you have problem, you could not go resort to what we call the we call competitive devaluation. So countries outside Europe, like England, have more flexibility. So this then what happened? If you want what we call a monetary union, you have to go in hand in hand with fiscal union. That is mean that you have to sacrifice the other sovereignty, fiscal sovereignty, to make sure that some other country will not be suffered by what you have done in your own country about your fiscal imbalance. So that is what we call the structural problem. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have already given you the causes of the problem. What happened afterward? Okay, they have a problem, but why and how they try to remedy the problem? First of all, they set up 3 funds, as I mentioned, altogether accounting for 750 billion euros, dividing into under the supervision of what we call Troika. Troika first under 17 countries that are in the Eurozone. Second, the Commission, and the third IDIS, we call it Troika. Okay? And what else? What they need? When countries that, were on the brink of bankruptcy, they have to accept the help. So it means that you have to accept help, exchanging for money to make you survive. With what? With sacrifice, with what we call fiscal discipline. The fiscal discipline, mean what? First of all, you have to face what we call the political backlash, because fiscal discipline means recession, means more unemployment, means a lot of potential protest from your own people. Look at what happened in Greece. What happened in Spain. So in order to make sure that you can survive accepting a disaster, you must have political will. This is the problem with Greece. Greece accept but lack that kind of political will. So finally, all these countries have to impose what we call unnecessary political will. They say that, okay, Greece, you go all here. If you want to be part of Eurozone, you have to accept all this discipline. What happened? Greece have to change what? The political change. They have Lucas Panadeus in order to make sure that they have a political view. With the support in Britain to make sure that any change in the future, the policy will be the same. That is one thing. Secondly, okay, that is one thing. Secondly, the role of ECB. What happened? ECB have to sacrifice. They have already been, criticized, like Jean-Claude Trichet, have been criticized by German, and even Mario Draghi. They have what? They said that, oh my God, how could I help when the banks in EU, have the problem liquidity. Spain itself, bank without the intervention of the public, without the liquidity, could they survive? NPL. Secondly, what will happen? The contagion will be very dangerous if we see that the benchmark
for what? For the 10 years bond, the public bond is beyond 7%. That happening to Greece, to every country. Any country with a benchmark beyond 7%, that is about 5% beyond what we call the best benchmark, the Bund, that is the German. At the time, just 4 or 5 months ago, Spain and Italy were hovering around that area. So my God, what they do? So Draghi have to sacrifice something, inject liquidity amounting to 1 trillion euros. Okay? In order to make sure that the bank have enough liquidity to survive. Secondly, help the bank to buy public bond and keep the below 6 or 5. So that is the second measure to help that. The third measure being imposed by Merkel, German. You know, if you look at the history of the EU have already transcended a lot of critical period. 1965 to 66, what we call the empty chair crisis. La crise de chaise vide, the goal. They get over. Secondly, what happened? They have another crisis. Another crisis of what? During, for example, they have already aimed for the single market for so long, but during the decade of 1960, 1980-90, they have just, hovering around customs union achieved in 1968. So come one of the political chapter law beginning and leading to the single market. And lastly, with the integration of German, West and East German, so how could German become bigger? Could it be possible that German could be a threat for France? So in order to sacrifice this, so Helmut Kohl said that to François Mitterrand, okay, I will be greater, bigger, don't be afraid, because I will sacrifice my Deutschmark, so that comes what we call the single currency. And then you have another crisis, constitution fell right in the country that support the EU, the France. But then come the Treaty of Lisbon. So ladies and gentlemen, we have already seen in the historical development of EU, up and down. Every time they have suffered, instead of backtracking, they progress to the end. Look at what happened. Finally, they have what we call the Lisbon. The Lisbon has already established some what we call a federal element to what we call the United States of Europe. That is what some of the founding fathers aspire to be. One of the things that you have what we call the President Chaban Van Rompuy. Secondly, you have Lady Ashton as the foreign representative, something like what we call EU level of foreign minister. Then what happened? Now they try to change what we call the crisis into opportunity. With this kind of thing, Merkel have already imposed something. We will try to rid off all this problem. The only way I will help you only that we have what we call the fiscal union. And this fiscal union need to what we call change and accept in what we call a new treaty. So this is another measure. Once you have what we call the fiscal union, the detail is what? First of all, you have to make sure, guarantee that your fiscal deficit must be within the range that we cover. Secondly, every country has to yield the sovereignty, must be under supervision of the EU. And thirdly, there will be punishment for those who violate the cargo. Okay, that is very important. Because this treaty, the agreement has already agreed, finally in March. And then they need what we call a ratification that will take about 6 months or something like that. So once you have this kind of thing, I think that some of the elements to kill the problem has already there. And finally, they have already set up a new, what we call fund, the so-called European Stability mechanism. At the beginning, this fund could be, for example, replace the old one. ESFF is a temporary one. This one is a permanent one. But finally, the maker said that I will combine altogether 500 billion for European stability mechanism together with ESFF that have been left about 200, altogether 700 billion. So this kind of thing could be what we call some guarantee that in the future, if there is any problem, at least at this juncture, EU, particularly Eurozone, have more firepower to go against what we call any eventuality from some other country. So ladies and gentlemen, my conclusion is here, EU now is totally different from 2 years ago. If it elapsed 2 years ago, EU will explode and Eurozone could be disintegrated if it contagious to Spain or Italy. But now, if you look what happened, on one day, look at what happened. Rajoy, sacrifica las medidas para salir de la recesión. Rajoy have to work hard against what we call the protest. This is the problem. But on the other hand, you look all the measure. Euro is progressing in one sense. If the treaty being ratified by 25 countries, except United Kingdom and Czechoslovakia, this means that it is a step close to United States. But of course, we have to be exciting because to go there is a lot of problems. First of all, is there any political change? Yes. In May, the second round of presidential campaign, there is a possibility François Hollande could take over presidency from Sarkozy. But frankly speaking, François Hollande want to renegotiate. I don't think that substantially they could change. They want to put what we call stimulus. Secondly, Lucas Papadopoulos, could be, for example, leading a government in Greece. But of course, he is the one who already pledged that they will obey or lead the pledge that have to be done in order to get the aid from EU. Okay? What happened? Ireland will go to the referendum. But if you look what happened, referendum will endorse this one. So frankly speaking, there are a lot of problems. But if we look from this slide, I don't think that could be leading to what we call the eruption of the crisis to the point that the euro could be disintegrated. But of course, one or two things that we have to keep in mind that could lead to the eruption or the disintegration. First of all, if the political view in Greece, in particular in Spain, disappear, it's been worse. If you were, for example, a leader, oh my God, there were so many protests. How could we survive? Now the unemployment in Spain stand about 23. How could we survive? That is one problem. If Spain go, everything is gone. That could affect Italy. That's why Mario Monti said that, oh my God, I'm so worried in a sense because of Spain. Secondly, that's one thing. Secondly, if for example, some country, for example, with unforeseeable change in the politics, because some part of the parliament are against EU. If there is a change on that, that could delay the treaty, that could be a problem. So my conclusion is here. At this juncture, I think that EU is far better than 2 years ago. That's why Malia, like he said, that the worst is over. But frankly speaking, for mine, it's not yet over. But I think that it is better than what the EU faced during 1 or 2 years ago. Okay? So that is my conclusion is here. Because EU today have a number of measures that could preempt or at least remedy what would be to happen. But this is not to say that EU is safe. No, far from that. Still the problem. Because the problem is here. Look at Spain. you accept and you say that I have the political to impose the discipline. That is what we call a centurial discipline. For the first time, Spain, 23% unemployment, it will be worse than that. Secondly, Spain will face recession. And third, Bank of Spain need what we call what? The property in Spain need to be, downward spiral. In that sense, NPL will have. So that's what you can do, need more money. How would you kill that kind of thing? Of course, the more money can come maybe from, for example, ECB or on the other. But of course, this make believe the thing that the situation now is critical, but it will be more critical than this. So that is what we call the question mark. For me, it is the political view that matters rather than economic optimism. So if EU, Eurozone disintegrate because of Spain or because of Italy, I think they lack what we call political will to face with this eventuality. So this is what we call a threat. So it's not said that EU is safe. It's still a lot of problem. But think from now, looking back, I think we are better than what we have seen. Okay, that is my conclusion. Lastly, what happened? Lastly, if, for example, in the case that Euro disintegrate, beginning with Spain, so in this case, what happened? The world will never be the same. You know why? If Euro disintegrate, what happened? 30% of the world liquidity will be drained. In this sense, what we call stock market around the world will dip to the floor. Secondly, even without the Euro disintegrate, Eurozone and EU, this year growth rate would be plus 0.1 or 2, and some countries will be recession. Green will be more than 2 or 3 years. Spain at least this year on it. Okay? So what happened? Without the disintegrated euro, the world is still weak in the sense that euro is a very important country, but still facing difficult recession in a number of countries. And that's why it dragged China export, and also explained why China now is facing what we call the slowest rate of growth in more than 10 or 20 years, about 70% or something like that. There must be implication. But if the euro disintegrate, liquidity not only, the EU growth rate will be, dipping, will be in a tailspin. What would happen to America with a fragile economy? It will be also broken. What would happen to China? China is made up of, export is made up of 30% of China, but which country is the largest export destination? That's EU. So it said it means the world will be go under because the world is still recovering in a fragile model. So if there is something like it, now the situation will be worse than 3 years ago. Because 4 or 5 years ago, with the subprime, there will still a surviving instrument from the public. But now the public here, monetary policy with the interest rate below what we call nearly zero, with the fiscal policy within this one. So what happened? That is what George Soros has said, that maybe we are facing what we call the 100 years crisis, because they think of what we call the worst case. So ladies and gentlemen, but frankly speaking, I don't foresee that counting. I still believe that Eurozone and Euro could survive. Though I'm not 100% sure, but at least about 60%. For one thing, as mentioned, economically, they have more instruments to deal with. And politically, it's very important. As I mentioned earlier, structural, EU was created in 1952 with the setting up of what European Coal and Steel Community. EU is not set up purely for economic dimension. It's setting up in order to what? In order to help kill the conflict between two countries, France and Germany. So they need what we call supranational organization. Secondly, all the founding fathers think of what we call neo-functionalism. They have a strategic direction. We need some what we call a possibility of integration in the possibility of the area, coal and steel, and will spill over, and has already spilled over to 1958 with the setting up of two more communities, European Energy Community and the other Eurozone, and the other one, European Economic Community. That is the model for AEC. AEC is ASEAN Economic Community, EEC is European. So all these three make up what we call the EC. So ladies and gentlemen, that is why if the euro disintegrates, it's not only matter economically, but politically. What would happen? Euro is a symbol of progress, symbol of political unity. Once this integrates, people will look at German. Could it be possible that this one means channel or signal what we call the beginning of the end? What would happen in the future? What would happen the role of Germany, the biggest one in the world, in Europe? So that is very important. So ladies and gentlemen, that is why Merkel and all the others think that, oh my God, it is not only economically. Economically, okay, I'm going back to Deutschland, I'm going to France, that's all. But that would not only affect economically, but affect in terms of politically. And in terms of political role, without the integration, Europe would never be the same. You look at you read the book by Zakaria, Post-American World. It means that American is facing what we call the situation is declining because the other is the emerging, the rise of the rest. With the rise of the rest, Europe can afford to be disintegrated. So what happened? The cost for the disintegration is so high. And look at what happened, even the crisis, a number of countries now line up in order to be part. Next one will be Croatia, and some more countries will join us. So ladies and gentlemen, for me, my conclusion is here. I think that the EU, not only the Eurozone, is facing a lot of problems. But at this juncture, I believe that things is getting better, but not to the point that we are safe. We have to be careful on that. And we have to look at the development, as I mentioned. And of course, implication for EU could be a lot. It depends on the scale of the problem. Because now the world is interconnected. And EU is one of the grouping that is very important, in the world, not only economic, but politically. So ladies and gentlemen, that's my conclusion. So the implication, as already mentioned, is depend on how the Eurozone, fare in the future. So that is the question that need to be, for example, share of the opinion about what. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I end up for my presentation, so the rest will be open to the public.